Welcome to Bangalore International Centre, a platform for informed dialogue, arts and culture. BIC Talks, our podcast, brings ideas and conversations ever closer to you.
Hi, I'm Bhavan Srinath and welcome to the 10th episode of BIC Talks. I can't believe that we are here at the 10th episode already. Dear listeners, if you've listened to our episodes so far, please send us your feedback, suggestions, brickbats, and more on everything we talk about on the show. If you're a Bangalore International Centre member, please email us, and otherwise do share a comment on our Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram page. We're always listening. On this episode, we will talk about literature, not just any literature, but pandemic fiction. I have with me Samhita Arni and Gautam Shenoy. Samhita is the author of 4 books and retells mythological stories, with The Prince being her most recent book. Shenoy is a columnist, critic, and currently writes the Spec Fix science fiction column in the Bangalore Mirror. They're both here as avid and enthusiastic readers of science fiction. Sam, Shenoy, welcome to BIC Talks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we have not seen a pandemic of this nature in at least a century. And pandemics and epidemics were a lot more common and deadly in the past, but they don't form as large a part of our lived experience for many of us today. And so that's why we thought we'll explore how literature and fiction deals with various aspects of pandemic. So Sam, during the pandemic in literature, how do you see people react to this either foreseen or unforeseen catastrophe that happens?
Well, Pawan, when you ask that question, my mind goes immediately to U.R. Ananthamurthy's Samsara, because here you have a story of a Brahmin community that is deeply isolated, following patterns of behavior that have been gone on for centuries. And suddenly there's a death in their community. The plague comes and the central character is forced to wrestle with himself, abandon all kinds of ways of thinking and behavior. And I think this is something that we see when pandemics, when viruses, when diseases come upon us and afflict large portions of our population, is that we're forced to reconsider, we're forced to wrestle with patterns of behavior. We are changing in response. And I think this is something that is explored in a lot of pandemic fiction as well, that viruses alter human behavior. And after this, often in times, a civilizational reset where we abandon behavioral patterns and change into something different. Our society reshapes itself. So that's something I see.
Sam, thank you for starting off with Samskara and an example from Kannada literature. Shenoy, would you like to add anything here?
To get back to your question about, how people react and what you said, that this is the first time this has happened in our living memory, that perhaps explains the sudden popularity of pandemic fiction, right? If you have to look at our lived experiences, that's the first way people react, or that's the way people are reacting now, which explains how movies like Contagion and all are suddenly, topping the most viewed charts. But where I agree with Sam is that what a pandemic does is that it changes the nature of things. And if you get into pandemic literature, it actually falls into this subgenre called post-apocalyptic fiction, where a pandemic is supposed to be some sort of an apocalyptic event. But an apocalyptic event could even be a nuclear strike for that matter. So in that sense, where I would like to say what pandemics do is the difference between doom and disruption. And every pandemic, and if you read pandemic literature, that's what it concentrates about. It disrupts status quo, it disrupts the way things have been going on so far, it disrupts societal hierarchies and, just sort of evens everything out. Just like a virus doesn't care whether you're rich or you're poor or whatever it is. So the first thing that we see is disruption, and we're seeing the way our lives are being disrupted currently. And that's what even pandemic literature tells us is the first thing to go, which is the sort of the safe cocoon, the comfort of the familiar is the first to go.
Thanks, Gautam. Even in the first example that Sam mentioned, Samskara, the actual conflict in the story is about the death of an individual in a village and how do you go about your rituals in that time. And then there is also an epidemic that is happening all around them, right? So I've seen so much literature where perhaps given the frequency of things that happen, especially in older literature, pandemics and epidemics were almost incidental to certain stories or form an additional layer layer of meaning in literature. So in that sense, even today, COVID-19 has not struck us at a time where everything was in harmony. Humanity had no other problems to deal with. We have new geopolitical conflicts going on. We have a climate change crisis on our hands. We have enough societal and economic and social problems that we are dealing with. So how all have you seen the fault lines that exist in society be changed and morphed by a coming pandemic?
Well, Pavan, one of my favorite book series that's inspired a TV series is the Leviathan series, and you can all watch that on Amazon Prime. It's called The Expanse. It's 4 seasons of TV, which all focus on an intelligent virus that becomes self-aware and creates a pandemic. And I think the one hopeful thing that emerges for me from watching this television series, from watching this OTT series rather, is that in the face of a pandemic, we're often forced to lay aside our differences and come together. Whether we are in the expanses, whether you're Mars or from Earth or you're from some other part of the solar system, you forget these identities. In our time where we have to lay aside our nationalities, this is something that's affecting humanity regardless of where you are. And I think that is very important. Pandemics can or viruses in fiction often either aggravate existing wars, or they can actually force us to come together. Both of these options are available. You see both of this play out in Leviathan and Expanse books. So I think this is something useful that science fiction can offer us, an imagining of what the consequences or what the choices that we have are. Personally, for myself, I see the option of banding together in these times a far more fruitful one. I hope other people see that too.
Definitely, Sam. But at the same time, sometimes it feels like the threat that an epidemic or a pandemic poses is relative in nature. So if there's an ongoing conflict, there might be one participant in that conflict who might get affected more. And so temporarily, this might benefit the other participant in that conflict. I mean, going back to Homer's Iliad, you have a plague that strikes the Greek forces that are besieging Troy, and it gives the Trojans a brief respite where they can actually do a counterattack. So in that sense, while I hope that this brings people together, I think at the same time, pandemics exploit the venal nature in all of us as well.
I agree with you that viruses can be sort of play an unfair role. I mean, if you look at H.G. Wells' War of the Worlds or even something like Independence Day, the virus was on humanity's side. But speaking of pandemics per se, the virus doesn't care who you are or where you're from and stuff like that. So in that sense, what I've seen in pandemic literature is that, like Sam said, it exposes the fault lines in society. If you look at the classic like Edgar Allan Poe's The Mask of Red Death, where all these people go and, sort of bunker down the privileged people thinking that they're safe from the plague, but then it gets them in the end. And it's the same with right now where we are seeing a lot of these rich folk, the 1%ers trying to go into their own bunkers and that sort of a thing. And that was treated very well in Cory Doctorow's story Mask of the Red Death, which has the same name as Poe. And, the plague does get to them in the end. So in that sense, if you look at it, it exposes the fault lines. And as far as conflicts go, I think, how do you use it is up to you.
You mentioned the word venal and the fact that there's a lot of greed that's often attached to the way human nature is. We seek to exploit things. We often seek to exploit nature and natural resources. This, I'm coming back to The Expanse, but there's in this sci-fi series, there's a group of people who are seeking to weaponize the virus and use it against for political gain and monetary benefit. We will see parallels of this happening in our world. There will be companies that go bust. There will also be companies that make huge fortunes and exploit the situation. There will be countries that will exploit the situation between each other. So I think science fiction can also show up a mirror to these aspects of ourselves. And absolutely, you're right. While we can come together, we can also use this against each other.
I completely agree with Sam in that science fiction literature holds up a mirror, especially the pandemic literature, because at the base of it is that a virus, in a sense, has no political leanings and does, favor the rich or go against the poor. In the eyes of a virus or during a pandemic, everybody's equal, which is why perhaps, and they don't have like super villainy origin stories, which perhaps makes a virus or a pandemic the best way to talk about society, about how we sort of come together or fall apart in the face of a faceless enemy, if I can call it that. On one hand, a pandemic does expose existing fault lines, the way you would see it in Edgar Allan Poe's Mask of Red Death or in the more recent Cory Doctorow story, Mask of Red Death, which are both basically to do with the rich and the privileged trying to escape the plague by sort of bunkering down. Or you can look at how people do come together. I mean, the classic right now, the one that resonates closely to where we may be heading is this book called Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel, which the author herself says we shouldn't be reading right now, but it speaks a lot to what is happening currently, where a plague suddenly afflicts the world. And we see how these small communities form and people start looking for things that bind them together and all. And for me, the biggest thing that Station 11 resonates with, its theme that survival is insufficient.
Could you expand on that, Shenoy? The idea of survival being insufficient?
So there's this pandemic and a lot of humanity is wiped out. So once and people have banded together, new communities have formed. So where this theme of survival is insufficient, the way it tries to make a difference between trying to merely exist and trying to live. How do we go about these things? I mean, what are those things beyond survival that we look for in a completely new world order, if I may use that word?
When Gautam was talking about Edgar Allan Poe and Cory Doctorow and how the rich and the privileged sort of bunker down in their stories, I was also immediately taken to thinking of the Decameron, which I think is a 13th century, is it 13th century? 14th century work of literature that comes out of the Black Plague in Europe. And here there are a bunch of rich and privileged folks who are escaping the plague that's sweeping urban areas, and they go into a rural provincial setting. They sort of do 14th century equivalent of social isolation, and to pass the time more pleasantly, they tell each other stories that are recorded in the Decameron. I think this is really interesting because it parallels us today. The rich and privileged, we're all hunkered up. We are enjoying our social isolation on Zoom calls with each other, and we get to watch Netflix at night. So again, Edgar Allan Poe, Doctorow, the Decameron, and our present times, all of these there are many points of intersection, many parallels, many mirrors here.
And it comes back to the idea that survival is not sufficient, even if survival sometimes is really, really hard. We need our entertainment, we need our human connection, we need everything that make life joyful and meaningful for all of us, whether we are privileged or not, right? I mean, I fundamentally reject these sort of Maslowian ideas of when what kind of pleasures mean something to us. I mean, entertainment, for example, is something that every single person in the world needs in one form or the other, whether it's a story, a Netflix show, or something else. So moving on, how do you see pandemic literature explore governments, kings, and people in power and how they react to pandemic in fiction?
In most of the pandemic literature, it's usually about the everyman. It's about the common society, and the governments really don't have too much of a role to play. I mean, except of course as, trying to alleviate immediate losses and so on and so forth. But if what's been happening so far is anything to sort of go by, I was reading something that Ted Chiang was talking about with respect to our current pandemic situation. He was speaking with reference to the US, of course, but it's applicable to a lot of other places as well, that the way it's playing out now, the way more fiction than real. And in that sense, it's not so much a pandemic novel as it is a political satire.
Absolutely. And even going back to stories like Brave New World, what to me is important and relevant is not so much the pandemic, but the idea that there's also an information pandemic, right? There's misinformation that is spreading virally, that is spreading rapidly, and that refuses to die. Like for one specific instance, if I can give you, there was this story that, this virus is man-made, that it's human in origin, it didn't come from bats. And there was one particular preprint of a paper from, I think, February or so, which said that, there are parts of the genome which correspond to HIV. And this is something that got retracted within a week. The scientific community said, no, this is bunkum. However, it is a story that refuses to die. And in that sense, in a world where all of us are inundated with information, whether you're an expert, you're a scholar, you're a researcher, or a layperson, there is just so much information, and misleading information out there that it is very difficult to make sense of it all. And it's easier for us to switch on a show, tune out, and see what we can do to ride this wave out.
Could probably look at, fake news and conspiracy theories as a morbid form of pandemic fiction, especially those conspiracy theories with 5G and all of those things, or the fact that China is using this as a bioweapon, etc.
Pavan, I think that's also, what the points that you both raised are really fascinating. And I think there's also an interesting pattern that we see when we examine literature to see how governments and kings respond to pandemics. I think there are 3 or 4 parallels that are worth keeping in mind. Firstly, one, in a lot of mythological fiction, in the Bible and stories that come from every culture, we see many catastrophes happen. And the leaders that take people or survive or endure these catastrophes often emerge being thought of as a prophet or as a king. I mean, some of the prophets I'm thinking of are Noah, Jonah. These are all leaders that are emerging through kind of moments of catastrophe. These are trials of great endurance that are character shaping. So that is something that's interesting to think about. I think if I were to think specifically of fiction and speculative fiction, I think the zombie apocalypse novels, though this might be a little hilarious, offer us some interesting thoughts. I'm specifically thinking about World War Z, which is it's a zombie apocalypse novel where zombies are a plague. And then these governments go into all kinds of reactions. There are safe zones, there are attempts at containment, all of these sorts of things. So I think sometimes reading World War Z in this moment offers an interesting parallel. 2 other thoughts. One is, you had mentioned the Iliad and the plague, but I'm going to speed forward through Greek history to the moment of the death of Pericles in Athens, after Athens suffers a great plague, and Pericles is this great leader. The politician today that we see invoke Pericles the most is Boris Johnson. And like his hero Pericles, Boris Johnson has also fallen victim to the plague. Luckily, he survived. But after the death of Pericles, we see the sort of Athenian democracy spiral into a kind of demise. And that's also something to think about. At that same time, we have Socrates at the time of Pericles' death, developing immunity to the plague and actually helping to nurse all of those who are suffering from the plague. The 4th interesting thing that I see literature point out, and Gautam, correct me if I'm getting this wrong or right, Cory Doctorow's novel, I think it's called Little Brother, and he really talks about how the surveillance state kind of strengthens emergence after we go through a catastrophe, after we go through a kind of intense moment like a pandemic. In the Little Brother's case, it's a terrorist attack. But I think we're also seeing a moment where the surveillance state is strengthening, and what the consequences of that could be in long term are, I think, important for us all to take into account.
Yeah, you're right. I just wanted to say that it was much easier in the days of the Iliad and the Odyssey when, for the leaders, because it was all blamed on the gods and on Apollo. You just had to sacrifice a goat or kill a few sheep and you're done with it. You placated the gods. It's a lot more difficult nowadays.
The horror of comparing Pericles with Boris Johnson apart. I really want clearly, the father of Athenian democracy and, the recipients of Brexit. Why do you think people have written pandemic literature through history? And even today, over the last, century, where we've not seen pandemics of that scale, but it has inspired plenty of science fiction. It has also inspired plenty of real world action and planning, right? We knew that an influenza-like virus could hit us. We knew that, bats were reservoirs for many viruses that could potentially infect humans. We knew some of this going in. It was a question of when, at what scale, and what magnitude, and whether we'll be prepared when that happens. So any thoughts on what motivates people to write fiction around pandemics? Are there a great literary device, or is there something more there?
Speculative fiction at its core is a thought experiment. All good science fiction novels are good thought experiment. And a pandemic or pandemic fiction is a great way of looking at how societies would change. Like I said, any other form of conflict that you take or any kind other form of catastrophe or apocalypse that you can take, there's a villain, there's a good guy, and there's a bad guy. It's just a virus, right? A virus is neither a communist nor a capitalist. It's neither rich nor poor. It does not differentiate between caste, creed, religion, nothing. So in that sense, when something like this comes in and starts wiping out or evening out society and killing people, how will we respond to it, and what is the aftermath of it? What are the ways in which these scenarios could play out? That's a great thought experiment, and that is what I think has driven a lot of these authors to write pandemic fiction.
Just to jump in here, I think one of the thoughts that comes in is that pandemics or any catastrophe is a great setting, because what I think many writers are concerned with is the nature of the human character, the nature of what we are itself. And pandemics, catastrophes, they bring out the worst as well as the best in us. So again, as Gautam said, this science fiction is a kind of a thought experiment, but it also offers us the mirrors to the possibilities of what we can be, or the best and the worst. So I think more than any other kind of form of fiction, I think speculative fiction, particularly science fiction, is concerned with possibilities of change, of how we can reimagine ourselves, how we can reimagine the world around us. And I think more than anything else, pandemics are also an opportunity for us to perhaps not sink into dystopia, but is there a way we can come out of this to imagine a better utopia, this coming together, the fault lines, the weaknesses in our system that are being revealed by this virus? Can we emerge from this stronger, in better shape, perhaps?
Yeah, it's like pressing the reboot button, and it's a good way of doing it. For example, if you look at this, it's one of my favorites. It's this novel called Earth Abides by George R. Stewart, in which this virus comes and very instantly wipes out a large portion of humanity. And then how do the people who are left create a new society? How, for example, nobody knows how to run a hydroelectric factory. Nobody knows how to manufacture things. Nobody knows how to drill oil. So all the modern convenience just sort of start dying out. And how do you rebuild society from scratch? That's a great thought experiment, and there are many ways in which it can play out. And like Sam said, how different people react to different things, which is why if you look at most of the pandemic literature, even if, for example, a classic like Station 11, the authors don't quite get too much into the epidemiology of it, the details of how the virus spread and how many people died and what was the rate of transmission and all that. There's a before pandemic happens, and then there's an after, and most of the time it's the after that the authors are concerned with, about how people would, how society would play out, or what are various ways in which people would cope or not cope, right? Would they go down a dystopian hellhole, or is there a hopeful end to it all? That to me is a great thought experiment, and that perhaps, like I said, is why, pandemic fiction is still popular and it's still being written.
Thank you so much. And here, of course, in fiction, people have the luxury to explore thought experiments rather than real world experiments, right? And that's the challenge. And that's where I want to put as many disclaimers as possible on this episode, that we are having this conversation, but, we should be careful in what lessons we draw for human society as well, because the cost of, most of humanity being wiped out is unacceptable to all of us. So while we can imagine that future, what happens if there are only, a few million people, or even only some people who survive, and what society they build afterwards? That cannot be guiding our action right now. It can be something that we can explore intellectually.
Of course, these pandemic fiction novels and all, they're just novels. They shouldn't be taken as instruction manuals.
Absolutely, right? So we are here trying to perhaps distract ourselves during a pandemic with this fiction as well. So let me ask a couple of parting questions to both of you. One, do you think it's a good idea to read pandemic fiction in the summer of 2020? Or do you recommend that our listeners, check out this episode, listen to our conversation, and then be done with pandemic fiction for a while? Sam, do you want to go in there first?
I finished watching The Expanse, ironically, last weekend. And my thoughts after that is, don't watch more pandemic fiction. Be done with it and spend the rest of the summer in the present. I think that would be my advice, because I had too many thoughts going on in my brain after that were probably not very healthy.
Yeah, same here. Ever since this whole isolation and social distancing has started, it's a very unfamiliar world, and don't think anybody would want to compound it or trigger God knows what else by reading pandemic fiction. So yeah, I think listeners should probably just stop talking or listening up about the pandemic literature with this episode, but make a list of all these things and go and read them once this whole thing blows over.
I agree with both of you, but with one caveat, sometimes the real world can be so overwhelming and depressing that even if we are drawing only faint parallels, it feels like fiction sometimes gives us certain clarity and certain insights that maybe the real world struggles to. Because like in medicine, a postmortem is always easier than diagnosis. Right. And so because we are living through a pandemic, it's difficult to say what's happening and how. And what fiction and what history and what other things tell us is somebody is able to do a postmortem there. Somebody is able to extrapolate there. So in that sense, for example, even before pandemic. Robert Harris is one of my favorite authors, and he's written a great set of books with Cicero as the titular character, a trilogy. I found that I could learn so much more about human politics from the Roman Republic and the end of the Roman Republic, and how much I could draw about Indian politics and world politics right now than actually reading the newspaper and reading research and other things. So I agree with both of you. I think excessive consumption of pandemic fiction in these times is definitely injurious to your mental health. But at the same time, I think it could provide perhaps a relief and perhaps some new insights into what's happening. So let's leave it to our listeners. But Sam, Shenoy, do you have a couple of recommendations, pandemic fiction to be read now or in the future?
My top 3 recommendations would be Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel. Second one would be George R. Stewart's Earth Abides. And for third place, it's a bit of a tie between The Plague by Albert Camus and Andromeda Strain by Michael Crichton, just because of how much fun it is.
I'm going to add those to my list because I've been wanting to read the Andromeda Strain for a long time, but I haven't gotten around to it. For myself, for readers, I would recommend actually watching The Expanse on Amazon Prime, reading Samskara, and I think this might be particularly interesting for an Indian audience. And this is not pandemic literature, but to really think of what the consequences of this moment can be for us politically, I'd really give a shout out to Cory Doctorow's novel Little Brother. That's also available for free online. He's made his novels free, I think.
He has. And even Cory Doctorow's The Mask of Red Death, I think, is also available for free now.
Sam, Shenoy, thank you so much. Dear listeners, we could only give you a few glimpses of pandemic literature here, and I hope you found a few useful takeaways. And if there's anything that particularly resonated with you, tell us what you liked or didn't like, what you found alarming from various stories. Please share it with us. We're all active on social media, and we can continue the discussion there. Sam, Shenoy, thank you so much for joining me on BIC Talks.
My pleasure. Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much. It was such a pleasure, Pawan.
Thank you for listening to this episode of BIC Talks. You can get our podcasts on our website, bangaloreinternationalcentre.org, or wherever you get your podcasts. Tune in for new episodes every week. Check out Bangalore International Centre on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And don't forget to regularly check in on our podcasts.